Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of White Sox Daily Live. My name is Ian Eskridge, and I am here with my co-host, the Danny Miller. How you doing, Danny?
You know what? Ah, I, I'm gonna say tonight is a bittersweet kind of show. You know, I'm doing well. This train wreck of a season is finally over, but the word train wreck is still in there. So, you know, I guess that's where the bittersweet comes from. It sucks that it was so sucky to watch such a suck fest, and they could suck my big fat toe right now because there's a whole lot of suck going on. But what doesn't suck is that it's over. so, I'm hanging in there as a White Sox fan, just waiting to get this off season rolling. We're gonna watch everybody else have fun in the postseason while we sit here and mull over new hires and new directions and all these other things. So, you know, just looking forward to some sort of positive return over the next couple months here. But anywho, how you doing, man? How's things?
I'm doing all right. Can't complain too much. I mean, the White Sox season's over, so so much pain. This year it was it's definitely the most unpleasurable baseball experience I've ever had. Um, Worst season of our lives. Negative 200 run differential, 61 and 101. They lost 100 games as we've been saying that they probably would for a couple months now. Um, and unfortunately, that came true. And so I don't know. Han and KW are gone. So, I mean, essentially, we're just going to be more or less seeing you know, what Chris Getz has planned. And, you know, we've already seen one thing with the coaching staff happen here already that we'll get into in a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's so many holes that need to be filled. And, you know, yeah, just this year was just brutal, and I mean, I, honestly, I'm just happy that it's over.
Yeah,
I don't know how else to say it. I'm just happy that this season's over because I don't want to look at it anymore. So,
same.
yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, that's pretty much about it. I mean, it was just terrible. It was just not any fun. Um, there was individual moments of okay baseball, but it was all on a on a single player's achievement. Whenever
Right.
anything good would happen, I mean, it was never anything that was team related because the team was just a utter train wreck, and it was like if we got anything, it was a little tiny morsel of success for somebody. I mean, we got to enjoy Luis Roberts' season this year. Finally, get to see him play 140 plus games, and of course, he gets for the last week he's injured with the strained MCL. But I mean, we find realistically, I mean, you got more health than you've gotten out of Eloy in a few years. You got more health than you expected out of Luis Robert, and Moncada was out for a while, and it took him a while to finally get back to being in baseball shape. And the last month or so, it looked like he was back on the path to becoming, that Yohan Moncada that everybody was hoping that we would get this year. And I a lot of people complaining, saying that well, of course he's going to have a good last month, so he retains his spot on the team, and and then next year, is going to be a contract year, so he's going to have a great year next year because he's trying to look for that money, and it's, you know, that's like a
Oh,
level of pessimism that I just don't go to, you know? Like
no,
I don't
there's nothing to suggest that this back issue is ever going to fully go away with him. And it's a shame because we have seen those flashes, right? You kind of allude to that, in what you're saying right now, but we've seen those moments of where Yo-Yo looks like he could be a breakout star, but he can't stay healthy. And this isn't, just 1 or 2 seasons. This is 5 years of this guy.
yeah.
Just we talk about we go back to his rookie season, and we talk about how much better his rookie season could have been if he wasn't being squeezed by every umpire in the league. He was getting that rookie squeeze. But the whole thing about him during his rookie year was this guy's got an impeccable eye. And he's going to see a lot of good pitches, once he gets past that rookie squeeze. And his second year in the league, we saw those flashes of him looking like he might be a breakout star. But again, he had some injury issues, and they just never seem to be something that's 100%. He's never 100% ever. And I don't know that being in a contract season next year is going to have any kind of impact on his game. Unless he gets healthy, he is what he is. So, I don't know, man. It's difficult, especially when you hear quotes like "we have stars, multiple on this team, and we just need to put the players around them that want to play the game of baseball with those stars and play the game the way it's supposed to be played." We get quotes like that, and we're going, I don't know. I don't know. Right now, I feel like we have star, and that's one season of star in Luis Robert. So, is there the potential to have stars multiple? Absolutely. Eli. Whoa, Lord. Wow. Eloy could potentially be a star if he figures
Could.
out how to, be the DH that everybody thinks he should be and not be an everyday outfielder. And we've seen flashes of that too, where, he potentially could be that guy. Yoan Moncada, if he can be healthy, could be a star. But again, for all the reasons I just gave and what you were kind of alluding to, I don't know if that's possible. Andrew Vaughn, we were kind of hoping would take that next step, but the power numbers just weren't there for the entire season. He started off with a little bit of pop in his bat this year, and it just kind of fell off. Yeah, there are potential stars on this team, but honestly, I feel like as of right now, there's one, and his stardom also hinges on remaining healthy. So yeah, I don't really know, man. You know, and I have the very fortunate luck of being the only White Sox fan in my place of business where I work. So after being out on vacation the last couple weeks, as our listeners know, I spent some time in Mexico with the wife, and then last week came back home when came down with the old COVID, if you will, and spent last week at home as well. So today was my first day back in 3 weeks, and you know, all the Cub fans that I work with were asking me how I felt, and I pretty much told them, like, you know what? As much as I hate to admit it, I would rather have had the Cubs season that you guys had, even with that epic collapse in the last week and a half of the season where you're blowing games in the eighth and ninth inning and not being able to secure that playoff spot. But at least they had an entertaining season. I was not entertained as a White Sox fan, and I was very straight up with those guys about it. And I was expecting to get the ridicule and the ribbing that, happens between White Sox and Cubs fans when you get into these conversations, and nobody did that. It was almost like they were like, "Hey, bro, this is your funeral, and we're not going to dog you." So, yeah, man. I don't really know what else to say.
Yeah,
Are you with?
that's. I mean, I would have also like to have had the White Sox to have had the season that the Cubs had, because it looked like they actually figured something out. And some of the guys took steps forward, and they brought up guys from minor league baseball. And, other than PCA, which people were complaining that he didn't get a lot of playing time, um, which, ended up costing them because, like some plays weren't made and whatever out in the outfield. But, you know, at least there was some excitement there. I mean, with the White Sox, it was like a death march from April, mid-April. It was just like, oh, here we go again, you know?
Well, and the thing is you talk about that. They had guys that they brought up that did some things. They also had some off-season acquisitions that did some things. Okay, Dansby Swanson wasn't exactly the world beater that everybody hoped he would be, but still very solid shortstop for them. He wasn't the same guy as he was with the Braves, but he had a good season. And then you look at what Cody Bellinger did for the Cubs, and you're going, why can't the White Sox sign a guy from outside the organization that everybody and their brother goes, this guy's got potential, and okay, yeah, maybe he's coming off an injury and we're not 100% sure, but we're going to give him a chance. No, we're going to go dumpster diving for guys that Rick Hahn wanted out of the draft 5-6 years ago. And I'm not going to say that Benintendi was a dumpster dive, but he wasn't exactly the finishing piece that we were hoping for, right?
Yep.
So, it's just difficult to be a White Sox fan right now and watch not just the rest of the league do it, but the guys on the north side do it. And then, like, people like me who got to go to work with these people every day and listen to it day in and day out. And, we know how that goes.
Yep.
It's not fun. So, when you get to this point in the season and they actually have pity on you, that just goes to show you how bad it really was. Where Cubs fans are literally showing pity to us White Sox fans.
When they're showing pity, that's when you know that you're going through it. Because yeah, just brutal, man. Brian Ramos just doubled to the left center field wall in the AFL, so that's a double for Jacob Burke and a double for Ramos.
Not a bad start to the AFL for those guys.
Yeah, I can't complain about that.
Hey, I'd like to see the guys in the org do a little something.
Yep, that's nice. Yeah, so the last week of the season was pretty much the last series of the season against the Padres was more of the same. No offense. Getting shut down by the Padres and lost, got swept and lost some low-scoring affairs. And the pitch on the plus side, the pitching looked pretty decent.
Yeah.
But again, no hitting, no stringing hits together. Hardly any power to speak of, and you got a couple of solo shots.
You get the pitching, that you talk about in this series, but it's shocking to me that here we are at the end of the season, 101 losses, and the two most consistent pitchers that you knew what you could expect start in and start out from those guys was Touki Toussaint and Mike Clevinger. Were they the best pitchers on the roster? Not necessarily, but you knew exactly what you were going to get. The rest of those guys, I mean, I guess you could say you pretty much knew what you were going to get out of Michael Kopech. He was going to go up there and give you 3 solid innings somewhere in a 5-inning start.
Somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, you don't know which 3 innings it was going to be, but he was going to give you 2 innings where, he walks, 6, 7, 8 guys in a 2 or 3 inning stretch and gives up 4 or 5 dingers. Dylan Cease was just the model of inconsistency this season, up and down, and couldn't find his out pitch, and giving up some hard contact because he's got to throw balls. He's getting behind on hitters. Lance Lynn, before he was traded, was the guy who would go out there and just throw fastballs right down the middle and get touched up and throw 35 pitches in the first inning every start. It's insane that what we hoped was going to be one of the strengths of this team really was probably the biggest weakness in starting
It was,
pitching.
yeah, starting pitching was fairly terrible. I mean, there wasn't a facet of the game that the White Sox excelled at. I mean, I'll just be honest. I mean, their hitting was bad, their base running was bad, their fielding was bad, their pitching was bad. I mean, there wasn't really anything that they excelled at this year. At least last year that you could point to some things that they did well. And this year, there's really nothing to hang your hat on when it comes to that. And
no, like I said, when you get Tukey and Clevenger at the beginning of the season, people calling them SP5 because off field antics, whatever. But when those are your two most consistent guys, and you knew what you were going to get out of them every start in, start out, that's shameful. And I know that we kind of teased it a little bit in our Twitter header this morning, but we'll get into our preseason predictions.
I was just going to bring that up. I mean, it's literally, I want to say that my one prediction from last year that Luis Robert was going to lead the entire team in home runs and doubles and triples and RBIs, that came true this year.
It was a year late, but it did come true.
Yeah, year late, and literally everything else that I had predicted, literally everything else was just way off. Just because nobody on the team performed except for Luis Robert,
Nobody. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not even like really worth getting into because I just look in the mirror and I go, you're an idiot because I was wrong on everything. So,
to be honest with you, I'd like for our listeners to chime in with who of you predicted the White Sox would have 100 losses? Because honestly, we could go down the list of predictions that we made, bold or not so bold, early in the season or before the season started this year, and I would say we probably missed on 100% of those predictions. So really, it's probably not even worth getting into completely. But I would like to know if anybody saw this coming. I'm sure there were a handful of people out there that thought maybe we were being a little optimistic in some of our stuff, but I don't think anybody saw this epic of a collapse.
Yeah, I mean, I knew, in Facebook groups and stuff, I did see, some people that were around 500-ish, looking. Hey, Ray Gant, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for stopping in. There was, some people that said that the team was going to finish around 500, and of course, Grimtall, with his. The White Sox are going to lose as many games as the Dodgers are going to win, which he said in jest. Ended up, I didn't even, come to think of it, I never looked at the final total for how many games the Dodgers won, and I'm going to look because I want to say the Dodgers did win 100 games because they became the first team in history to win 100 games 4 years in a row. So I don't know if it ended up being exactly that.
101.
How hilarious would that be?
Wow.
Let's see here. It ended up being 162. The White Sox lost more games than the Dodgers won. And they won 100 games. I mean, it's insane.
And, but that's a hell of a prediction, even if it was in jest and just kind of a joke. And he was only off by a game.
Ray Gant says, I predicted back in spring training that the White Sox were going to be eliminated from playoff contention in spring training. I mean,
Excuse me.
I would say that, for the most part, though, most people were at least, thinking that it wasn't going to be worse than last year, and it ended up being ridiculously worse, 20 games worse.
So much.
20 games worse than last year. And, I can't really think of one thing that I would pin it on, I mean, like really realistically, like the only like real thing that changed was, like the real huge thing that changed was that Abreu's gone. Like
Yeah.
that was the one thing. And you saw his stats down in Houston. Like if he had been here and doing that and they had re-signed him for a $20 million contract and that's what they had gotten, White Sox fans would be going ballistic about that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they'd have
For
been,
all the
oh, we should have let
complaints
him
about
walk.
Andrew Vaughn, this year, Jose Abreu numbers in Houston were worse. So not by a lot, but they were definitely worse. Uh yeah, not much of a conundrum there for me. And you and I both predicted it. I mean, I shouldn't say predicted, but we both agreed that it was time to move on from Jose. Uh and it's one of those ones where it's a tough pill to swallow to say, this guy gave us his best years here, and we were hoping that that competitive window would not have slammed shut as hard as it did. But no harm, no foul, I guess, in Jose's mind right now.
Yeah, I
Because
mean he has to be. I mean he's going to the playoffs. He's got to be
right,
thrilled. You know.
he's at least seeing the postseason. There was no chance of that happening here on the South Side this year.
Yeah, I mean even had he stayed, there would have been
No,
no shot. I mean like they might have been 6 games closer to 500. So
maybe.
yeah, so I don't know. They would have been 15 games under 500 then, or 14 games under 500. Obviously, not going to change anything. So the season ended with a nice extra innings loss on game 162. The White Sox end up losing in extras. Um, Afterwards, and it wasn't mentioned, you know, in press conference or anything like that I can think of. It might have happened like I think it was after the presser maybe, but I could be wrong. But the bullpen coach Kurt Hassler was moved out of the bullpen role, and in true White Sox fashion, he is being reassigned to somewhere in the minor league system. Now,
Yeah, where we don't even know yet.
yeah, and my question here is if you're not feeling that you want to keep Kurt Hassler in the bullpen role
With veterans.
with veterans, and you hear, I mean, and I like this is the thing, I don't even really care about this nonsense that came out where they were talking about Santos sleeping in the dugout or what, or in the bullpen or whatever. Even aside from that, why would you put him in charge of the guys that you're trying to mold into Major League Baseball players if you don't feel comfortable having him around guys that are already supposed to have those fundamentals in check? Why are you sending him elsewhere to teach other guys stuff like that is okay? Because essentially that's the way I look at it, is if he's not good enough to be with guys that are supposed to be polished veterans or
Right.
guys that are major league ready, why am I going to put him around young, impressionable minds?
Right. In some other jobs in the world, a demotion might look exactly like that. This is a demotion. We're not going to fire you, but you're being demoted. It's a punishment for not doing the job that you were being paid to do. But in the world of baseball, when you go from the major league club down to the minor league system, this is where you're molding the young minds, the guys that need the coaching, the guys that need the skills to become major league ready baseball players, whether it be on the field or off the field. These are your most impressionable of players. It's like taking a toddler and moving them up into the ages of childhood, and then from childhood in the teenage years and adulthood. It's no different. I mean, that's the levels of minor league baseball all the way up to the major league club. It's like nurturing a child into his formative years and growth throughout those formative years and molding them into the man that he is supposed to be at some point. Why would I want to give that guy any control over that situation?
And see, like the thing is that I'm not necessarily saying that he's a bad coach, or that I think that that he is any bit of the problem with
No, I'm
that
sure
team.
he's not, honestly.
But my question is if you're in a GM role, why is if I was going to pick anything in any position in the coaching staff to say that's the problem, the bullpen coach would be the last place I would be pointing a finger at this particular moment. Especially with how badly these guys were abused all season because the starting pitchers couldn't go longer than 3 innings for the first, 2.5 months of the season.
Right.
I mean,
right.
and then you lose Liam Hendricks right out of the gate.
Yeah, he comes back for what, like 5 innings or something, and then you lose him again.
Yeah, and he comes back with a torn UCL. I mean, It's like we've always known that it was partially torn, but come to find out that he came back and he knew that he was going to need the surgery. So, I mean, realistically, he came back with a complete disregard for the team's performance, and he kind of went out there and did it for himself, which, I mean, I guess is cool. But, when you're throwing 90-mile-an-hour straight fastballs and your slider's not going anywhere and your arm's about ready to fall off.
Since he's had that partial UCL tear going back 4 or 5, 6 years, however long it is, he's been pitching through that. And then to go through cancer treatment, which is going to take its toll on your body. And, everybody says about, we heard, and kudos to him for everything that he and went through and was able to get himself as healthy as he possibly could and as quickly as he could. Because, when this all went down, we thought he might be gone for the season. And for him to make it back before, the All-Star break, long before the All-Star break even, a great story.
Yeah,
but
100%.
It doesn't do the team any good for him to come back in that situation. Him as a person, fantastic. I'm glad that he is healthy. When it comes to cancer, anyway, obviously the UCL is not healthy, but I'm glad that him and his family are going to be able to stay together for much longer than than had he not been able to beat his cancer, right? But
yeah, 100%.
It does not do the organization any good for him to come back, pitch 5 innings, knowing that he's probably not feeling right already.
Yeah. No, that's 100%. It's like, and I'm not saying, oh, he's being selfish because he wants to help the team. Like I get it,
Absolutely.
And he's a gamer, but when your arm's ready to fall off, your arm's ready to fall off. You should just say, it's just not going to happen.
No, but as you say too, in the realm of the whole Kurt Hasler conversation, he and the bullpen were probably the farthest from the biggest issues, that pertain to the collapse that this season was. I mean, there's like, we've said it multiple times. You've said it a couple times already just during this show that there's really no one place to point a finger and say this right here was the problem. This is what kept them from winning games. But it's all those little things when you start adding them up. When you got guys like Liam Hendricks who aren't there, and you got a bullpen that's being overused, and you got a starting staff that can't go more than 3, 4, 5 innings was like hallelujah,
Yeah.
And you got guys that can't walk, and you got guys that can't hit the ball out of the infield. You got guys that can't definitely hit the ball out of the park unless you're named, Luis Robert Jr. Each one of those little things turns into a big thing. It, like you've said before, you likened the whole thing to that cartoon with the snowball effect, where it starts out as a snowball, and by the time it gets down the mountain, it's a boulder the size of the mountain.
Yep. So speaking
I'm
of,
sorry. It's just my therapy. So I
yeah,
might be
it's fine.
repeating a lot of what we said before, but the bitch fest is on.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
And you
we've
talk
got
about Curtis Hasler. Oh, God, I'm sorry.
we've got like this week is the time to get it out because after this week it's we watch some playoffs and see what happens, and then it's on to the off season, and then we've got to
It's
start.
really time to get to work.
Yeah, and I mean, Chris Getz, better be getting to work right now.
Well,
Um,
we talked about some of those new hires that came in the last week or so. We did that in last week's show, and there were some definite positives with some of these guys that have been hired into the organization. Um, but it still leaves me with some pause, even when I hear about these positive hires, because when there are whispers coming from league personnel, team personnel, people who have been around the game, who know the game. This isn't just, you know, podcasters and bloggers saying this kind of thing, but when you hear from people that are in the know that Chris Getz is totally outmatched for the job and the role that he's in right now, and that the level of confidence from so-called baseball experts is pretty freaking low, that doesn't leave me with a whole lot of hope.
no, yeah, I mean, when I've got people telling me that he's got no business doing the job and can't have a conversation with you while looking at you is a an interesting choice. So if
You don't
you
say.
know, short of launching the entire staff, which I would not personally be upset with, especially with the addition of Bannister and allowing him to go out and find somebody to fill the vacant position with the pitching, as far as pitching coach goes, unless he really feels that Ethan Katz is worth having around, which he may. I don't know. They worked. Previously they worked together in San Francisco, so it could be possible that he's like, oh yeah, that's fine. Let's have him around. He's a good guy to work with, and he's got good ideas. He probably just needs some help, And it's like when you look at the entire pitching staff and what the entire pitching staff was doing, I have to imagine that him being one person with all of those guys just having garbage time out there on the mound, that it is so many problems for him to try and fix that it's too much for one or two guys, and if you were to change, I'm gonna go out on the ledge here and say that Daryl Boston would be one of the first people that you'd get rid of.
To be honest with you, when this overhaul happened with the coaching staff, I was quite shocked that Debo was still around. He served a role and a purpose for a long time on this team, and it was time to part ways, and they did not. So if he's back next season,
Yet,
I would be
yet.
right. That's what I'm saying. Well, that's what I'm getting at. If he's back next season, then I'd be really extremely shocked.
Yeah, the thing is that when you look at all these guys that were brought in, Eddie Rodriguez, Jose Castro, Charlie Montoyo, who Luis Robert doesn't even know his name. He probably does at this point because it was mentioned so many times. But Pedro Grifol, like these guys that were all brought in, the new guys, quote unquote new guys, Mike Tosar, the Major League Field Coordinator Mike Tosar. We saw Tim Anderson become the worst positional player in baseball this year with the addition of the Major League Field Coordinator. I mean, I don't see how any of these guys are going to keep their jobs, and especially with the amount of managers that are hitting the market right now and guys that and I TLR obviously, his age was you know certainly a lightning rod for the fan base, saying that you know he was out of touch, and he had a
Tony
history of
freaking
saying
Croc.
some really stupid things and doing stupid things, and then he gets hired, and then it comes out that he's been driving on his rims because he hit curbs with his car and his car's on fire and whatever. Like, I'm not saying that I necessarily want an old
Oh
guy
Lord.
as a manager, but when you see the
Hall of
amount of
Famer baseball person.
yeah, well, I mean, when you see like the amount of guys that are going to be available after this season, that are guys that are that have a at least a certain pedigree, and they've already told Pedro that he's golden for next year. Yet you've got all these guys coming out and available to take over that position. Like, I kind of look at it as negligence for them to keep him at this point.
Right. And then the rumors of, some of the new hires and continued search for new people to bring in the organization, and we're bringing in more people from Kansas City because their organization is so successful since, you know, making the World Series in, what was that, 2015, 8 years ago.
2014 and 15, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2014 and 15. They lost in 14 and then won in 15.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying though. Since they're winning 15, you know, I don't know how you measure up success, but they have been uh less than inspiring, I will say, to
Yeah.
try to keep
They
it, nice
they
here.
caught a 2-year lightning in a bottle, like the White Sox caught 1 year lightning in a bottle in 2005, and had a bunch of guys that overachieved and did it as a team. And they won, they went to a World Series 1 year, and then the next year they won the World Series. And they made a couple of good pickups, Zobrist and a couple other guys. They made a couple of nice pickups that really aided them in that, and just happened to get the right mix in there, and it happened to work. But ever since then, they've been terrible. Before that, they were terrible, you know. And
And
I
it's
don't.
not like them and bringing up young guys who are, fire starters, and this is not, something that we can point at. Well, this guy left and that guy left, and that's why the Royals have collapsed. No, they did have a bunch of guys age out, retire. They did have a bunch of guys leave the organization, but it's not like they had anybody coming through the system behind any of these guys that was like, hey, this team
That's a
could
guy.
still be a contender.
Yeah,
He's a
no.
guy.
Yeah,
He's a dude.
it
But
was
we're
like
gonna
once
we're
it
gonna
was done,
continue.
it's done.
Yeah, it was over. It was
Yeah.
over. There was nothing. There was nothing in the pipeline. There was nothing to be excited about for them. And this is the organization that we want to continually take personnel from to bring along the White Sox and develop our young guys and hope that something somewhere along the lines we catch that lightning in a bottle that has been elusive for the last 8 years
Yeah,
for the
I mean,
team that we're blaming these guys from.
realistically, what we've seen from the Royals is that if you draft Bobby Witt Jr., then you're going to have a really good player. Because I mean, it's not like they really developed him at all. He's just very talented.
Yeah, he
You
was a
know?
stud coming
Yeah.
out in the draft. The guy didn't need much polishing.
No. Yeah, and this is a bit of a bugaboo with me as well. This whole thing about especially with the way that people have been talking about the White Sox farm system not developing any talent. And one of my favorite ones that people have started talking about because they're doing really, really well right now is they start talking about the Baltimore Orioles. Talking about, oh, well, look at how good the Orioles have gotten with all this young talent that they've developed.
Drafting
Developed?
no, the Adley Rushman was an absolute stud.
Number one pick. Colton Cowser. It's like
Right. Stud.
all these guys that are like coming up, Heston Kjerstad, all these guys that are coming up were first or second rounders.
Right.
All of
And
them.
when you were as bad as the Orioles were for as long as you were going to get a bunch of those high draft picks. You were
Exactly.
going to get a bunch of young guys who were close to MLB ready when they were drafted.
Yep. And I mean, I'm not saying that that the White Sox have a better track record than the Orioles do as far as developing talent. But I mean, let's be honest, like some of these guys that they picked are just really stinking talented, and it's not like they had them for a while and then all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, now I understand how to play baseball." These guys came
Right.
in and they were just really good. And it just happens to be that they have, because they're picking, first and 38th or whatever, or 41st or whatever it is, that when you pick that early in the draft, that you're able to amass a lot of talent, you know?
Yeah, it's going to happen. You would think the
Funny how
White
that
Sox
works.
with some of their higher draft slots, when you're drafting in, you're slotting in at 3, 4, and 6, 3 years in a row or whatever it was. You would hope that they were going to hit and some of those, and unfortunately, didn't work out that way.
Well, I
You
mean,
know,
this
they
is
picked the safe guys, and the safe guys. I hate to say it, but unfortunately, more often than not, the safe guys, you know what you're getting. Problem is the ceiling doesn't really rise from where they're at.
yeah,
They
well,
they might have a high floor.
it's the old argument of you know, low ceiling, high floor guys, that they're trying to draft a bunch of, low ceiling, high floor guys that are just going to fill out the organization and whatever. But the problem here is that as we've had this conversation numerous times on stream and off stream, that it's about talent evaluation. When the White Sox
Right.
had, the number 3, number 4 pick in the draft, the guy that they chose was never the right guy. It's
No.
just the way it ended up, is that it just never ended up being the right guy.
No, and if I think back, you and I spent a couple of those draft days together, and we were doing our pre-draft assessments on guys that were going to be picked, and every time it came for the White Sox to make that top 5, top 10 draft pick, every time they drafted a guy, we went, that's not really the guy I was hoping they would get. Every
Yeah.
single time you're looking at the board and you're going, man, I really hope they would have went for this guy. And we were like, and what we gave him the benefit of the doubt each time. Oh, Nick Madrigal, supposed to be the best pure hitter in his draft class. Fine, we'll give him an opportunity.
Maybe they know
He's
something that we don't.
he doesn't strike out. He's supposedly a good defender.
Great
And
base
okay,
runner,
so
very
yeah,
high baseball IQ. Not so much.
he's a slap hitter who's got gap power. Not gonna hit the ball out of the park, but he's got gap power. You know, mm, wow,
Yeah.
swing and a miss on that one. Great base runner, huh?
Yeah.
Watch that guy fall down on the base paths. I don't know how many times. You know, it's just it's a tough pill to swallow
Yep.
when guys like you and I and others that we spend some time with at these draft parties and having these discussions pre-draft with, and we're just couch GMs, we're armchair GMs, and we're seeing the things that are coming to fruition in real life. How is it that these talent evaluators for MLB ball clubs are getting paid a whole heck of a lot of money to miss?
Well, I mean, we have talked about this several times. That we don't know who was bumping in and insisting on who gets drafted, and whether the scouts actually were the ones who wanted these guys. That's been part of the problem, is that we never knew where to assess and lay blame. So hopefully with
Yeah,
this whole
that's true.
thing that kind of helps out, and Chris gets people that he wants in those positions, and he lets them do their job, and they do the job well. I mean, that's the only thing we can say. All right, so there was a Pedro Grifol made a quote when they were talking about what was going to happen with the staff going into this year. Pedro said, "It's a very sensitive issue. When you talk about the staff, you talk about people that have been here for a long, long time. Unfortunately, this is a game that's predicated on wins and losses. So obviously, every year this is a tough time of the year for staff. We'll talk more about that in the next few days." Now, my question is, if you lose 101 games and literally every player on the roster took a step back except for Luis Robert. Everybody took a step back. There's not one other hitter that actually improved, except for maybe Andrew Vaughn, possibly. Just the fact that he was above average as a hitter this year, which just barely at 103 WRC plus. That's like your one guy that didn't get worse, but everybody else pretty much got worse. How can you?
But
and the fielding got worse. The defense got worse. I mean, literally everything about the team got worse on a fundamental level. And
baseball IQ seemed to drop across
a lot. And this is the quote that he comes out with to say that, we're going to talk about this. Everything's based on wins and losses in this league, so we're really going to have some tough conversations.
And the thing is, when you start talking about some of these guys, these are obviously people that have been around for a good long while. Who? I mean, we just went down the list of all the new hires they made last year.
Daryl Boston.
Really been around. There you go. So is that a precursor to the only change we're going to make is Debo's going to be out the door? Because if that's the case, like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, and Daryl Boston and Ethan Katz. That's like the two holdovers,
right?
So and Kurt Hassler, which Kurt, we
just got demoted.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. So that's what the moves are going to be, and you're just going to fill in with whatever random guy from the Royals happens to be available at this particular time.
Exactly.
And that's going to make the White Sox better.
I wonder what Charlie Montoyo is saying in this organization right now, because you're talking about a guy who I think was let go from his managerial position, let's just say a little bit prematurely, and was doing some pretty good things where he was at, and now you bring him in. We bring in a first-time manager, and you've got an experienced manager as your bench coach. I don't know. I just feel like there's some things that are all kinds of wrong in those hires last year, and now moving forward into this year. Again, confidence is low.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wonder, what is going on behind closed doors and what's being said. I mean, obviously, I'm sure everybody does, but I mean, I just wonder, it's like you've walked in on a conversation from people that you've known throughout your entire life. You ran into a couple of people that aren't exactly bright, and then you walk into a room and you hear their conversation, and you're just kind of going about your business, doing what you're doing, but you're hearing what they're talking, and you're just like,
what
is wrong with? Yeah, like I like that's kind of how I. It's kind of how I see these things, It's like I'm walking into a room and like just in the, behind me talking, I just hear like two dim people having a conversation, and I'm like, what are these guys doing here?
Oh Lord, I know exactly what you mean.
Anywho, they asked Yasmani Grandal, and I don't have that quote in front of me right off. Like I don't have it ready here,
but you can paraphrase.
He said that that he thinks that Pedro's he's good, and that he's good for a young team, and that he'll help a young team. How?
It says the guy who's on his way out.
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly it.
The guy who who's quoted as saying he's going to test free agency. You don't. You're gonna. This is your. It was his decision. He wants it to be his decision that he was going to
Right.
test free agency. Sure, buddy.
Yeah, it's your decision, all right. Yeah, it's just yeah, I don't know. The whole thing's just super frustrating. Not that I need to tell you that, but so another thing that has come out in the last little while since the last game here, Tim Anderson has come out and said that
Oh
he's
yes.
willing to move positions. Um, does that move the needle for you in any way, shape, or form about picking up his $14 million option for next year?
Absolutely not. 100% no. As a matter of fact, I think that hurts his chances if he all of a sudden wants to be a second baseman. And the reason I say that, as I've said it before on this show, and I'll say it again, there are more moving parts to be a second baseman than there is on any other position in the infield. You are involved, besides maybe a first baseman. You're involved in, in the first baseman. When I say he's involved in a lot of plays, it's just because somebody's throwing the ball at him. If you can scoop and you can stretch and you can field. I mean, you don't have to be the best fielder in the world. You just got to be able to field the average regular grounder. You can be a pretty good first baseman in baseball. Footwork essentially is your biggest thing when you're working the base. Uh, as a second baseman, there are more moving parts than there are for a shortstop. You're gonna have to work the wheel play. You've got to be able to now turn the double play from a different angle completely. And we've all seen what Tim does as a shortstop, where he's already kind of lined up moving towards first base to make the throw as a shortstop on the turn. When balls are hit the other way, and now he's going to be making the turn from second base, I'm not real comfortable and confident that he's going to be able to make those throws. Uh, there's just a lot going on. Being a cutoff man from a different angle or position, especially knowing the outfielders that we have that can't seem to hit a cutoff man anyway. It just doesn't feel good. Uh, the only thing that he's got going for him moving to second base is it's a position that is necessarily known for being the most offensive of position players in the infield, and he struggled mightily at the plate this year. So, I don't know. I just don't feel like I don't feel like that helps his chances. At the same time, the free agent market for middle infielders this year isn't exactly great either. We've talked about this a lot on the show before, and I will continue to say the same thing. I might just be parroting over and over and over again, but I would rather see some of these young kids get moved up and give them an opportunity to develop, because the White Sox aren't winning anything next year anyway.
No, they are not. I'd say
They're
that is
way
a
too many balls club.
fair assessment that the White Sox are not going to be competing for much of anything next year. And like
Unless they decide to open up $200 million in on the books in the off season.
I mean, even if
Which,
they did, though, I mean, they still have.
yeah, you gotta build a starting rotation, and you've got a bunch of holes in position players that you need to fill.
Yeah.
I just don't see them being. They might. I would hope to God they're more competitive next year than they were this year. But they are not going to be some playoff seeking world beaters going out there. And Tim Anderson is the guy we need playing second base to get us over the hump. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, not sorry.
No, yeah, and it's like that's there's the I can think of no reason why I would think that he would improve moving to a different position. I think that he
Right.
would just end up, making his errors over there instead of at shortstop,
Yeah, like negative 16, 17 DRS last time we talked about this
Yeah.
a week ago. All of a sudden he's going to find new footwork and new arm angle and better throws from second base. Sure, it's a shorter throw on the routine play, but again, like we talked about, it's a different throw on the turning two and going into the hole, and all these things. Do we expect him to be able to make those plays as opposed to the ones that he's been, missing at shortstop? I don't know. I don't buy it.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions here that I got earlier that I hadn't mentioned until now, but said he was asking about the injury to Hendricks and the team blowing more than 40 saves, and I part of the issue, yeah, is that these guys are blowing saves, but like my major issue here is that yes, they did blow saves, but you were also asking a lot out of guys that weren't, that not necessarily high leverage guys. First off, second off, when you are winning 3-2 in the in the seventh inning or the eighth inning, you're not going to win scoring 2 runs a game. And
No, and that's the thing. 1-run ball games. If we're talking about blowing saves, and does having a healthy Liam Hendricks for the entire course of the season change the outcome?
well,
Sure,
he would have been
absolutely.
traded. He would have absolutely been traded.
Yeah. I mean, if we talk about blowing 40 saves, let's be honest, you're not going to get that number to 0 ever because every team's got blown saves. So it's not like we're talking about a 40 game swing. First off, every team's going to have 10, 12, 15 blown saves over the course
So
of a
they
year.
got
The best.
people more. I think like the best teams even had way more than that. They had like 30 something. So it's not like the
Right.
White Sox were far. I remember looking this up. I don't know, probably about a month and a half ago, and the White Sox were in the middle of the pack when it came to blown saves.
Right.
And there was no correlation between blown saves and how many games your team won. Because there was teams that were far worse that were first in their division.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's, ratio-wise, you would think that the White Sox, because they had blown 30, 40 saves, that they would have been worse. But the thing is that percentage-wise, they weren't any worse than, like, a bunch of teams that were way ahead of them in the standings. So,
yeah, when you're middle of the road, the real question in that is, like I said, how many of those blown saves come in 1-run games as opposed to a team that's going to go out and win games by 3, 4, 5 runs, and your closer doesn't even get that opportunity to blow that save because you're putting up runs to win games. And that's really where the outlier comes to that stat for the White Sox. They just weren't putting up the offensive numbers to get into the win column often enough.
yep. Yeah, I mean, when you lose, you're losing 1-run games, you're losing 2-run, 3-run games because your relievers are giving up a grand slam. I mean, yeah, technically that's a blown save, but the thing is that, if you're only scoring 2 or 3 runs a game for most of the year, personally, I don't really think it matters. We know that the offense wasn't putting up enough runs.
Right. And then that's really what it comes down to. You got to be able to score to win in this league, and it was not happening far as near enough as it should have been.
True that. Second question was, the coaching staff seemed quiet. Why weren't the other coaches advising and helping Pedro more? I mean, I can't speak to.
That's kind of what I was getting at with Charlie, but anyway.
Yeah, I guess, but like my thinking here is that how do I know how vocal these coaches are? And how much they're
doing in the dugout. We don't know what's going on behind the closed doors.
Yeah, how much do I know that how do like we asked the same question about TLRs, that if the other coaches are saying something to him, how much is he listening? It's like when you hear Pedro Grifol in his in his pressers afterwards talking to these reporters, what about his answers and his body language and the way he answers questions would suggest to you that suggesting something to him in the dugout would
fall on deaf ears?
Yeah. I mean, what about like the answers that the Jim Boylanish answers that you get would not
great comp, by the way.
I mean, I mean, I wasn't. James Fox has been saying it for a while, but I mean, it's 100% true. Like the answers that you get from him are ridiculous. And the thing about Jim Boylan is that he always thought he was right.
Yeah,
You
you
know?
are. Well, that's a great point actually, because when we're talking about coaches, are the other coaches on the staff, how much is that manager really taking their advice and the things that they're seeing to heart? So uh yeah, I'm kind of I'm actually in full agreement with you on that. We don't really know.
Yeah. I mean,
It's
we
hard.
don't.
It's difficult to say.
Yeah, we don't know, but I do know that one thing that has been told to me throughout the years is that the problem with stupid people is that they don't know that they're stupid. Um, so, anywho, moving along here. So the playoffs are here.
Yeah.
Who do you have as your team that you're really rooting for in the playoffs this year?
Well, I won't call it rooting because obviously I'm a White Sox fan first and foremost.
Of course.
So, if I'm really looking at anything, um, you mentioned earlier in the show that the Dodgers being the first team to have 100 wins 4 straight years in a row, I would like for them to, finally kind of solidify what I mean, we're talking about a team that's been talked about for well beyond those 4 years being one of the best teams in baseball, and they seem to kind of find a way to fall on their face year after year when it comes to the postseason. Not always, obviously. They have an appearance in the last couple of years, but I think they're fine. I think this is their time. I think this is their season to take that commissioner's trophy home. Outside of that, really, you know, not having a horse in the race kind of leaves me, and it's not just not having a horse in the race; it's the disappointment of this White Sox season. Where I'll be completely honest with you, it's tough for me to watch baseball at all right now. I will obviously pay attention because it is my favorite of all the four major sports. Will be my favorite of all the four major sports for the rest of my life. So I'll pay attention, but I don't really know that I'll have anybody that I'll be really pulling for. But I think if I'm going to make a prediction, I'm going to go with the Dodgers and take the whole thing.
Okay.
What about you? Do you have anybody you're really watching, or do you have like do you have a team or a guy that you're kind
So,
of hoping to find some
well,
success?
I mean, of course we've got Jake Berger, and I'd love to see for him to do well.
Me too.
Um, I would like to see Bryce Harper do well and win one. That would be cool. Um, I also wouldn't mind seeing the Dodgers win a World Series and have it be a full season World Series
Right.
win, other than the 60 game World Series
Right.
that they won. That would
Right.
be interesting to see. Um, you know, as far as the American League goes, I mean the Orioles are a lot of fun. Um,
Indeed, a lot of young talent
I
over
have,
there.
they're the Orioles, so I have a hard time saying that I would root for the Orioles, especially with 1983 feelings about 1983 still stuck in my craw this many years later. Um, but I mean, like like previous years, there's not like other than the Twins, there really aren't teams that I hate in the playoffs. Personally,
Right.
I know that some people have like some some of these teams that they really dislike, but I mean, for me, the Brewers are fine, Phillies are fine. Like I don't have a problem with any of these teams that are in there this year, really, other than the
Yeah.
Twins. And I hope
No,
they
and I'm
I hope
glad
they
you
get
brought
swept
up
out.
Jake Berger. Yeah, me too. Me too. But I'm glad you
Diamondbacks,
brought up Jake
fun.
Berger. I actually had this conversation with somebody within the last week or so. The person that I was talking with, made a little bit of a comparison to Kyle Schwarber for Jake Berger, and I thought to myself, you know what? I won't say it's a bad comp. And I like the idea of, Jake Berger kind of having this meteoric rise since leaving the White Sox organization and going over and doing the things that he's done and, becoming a quick fan favorite in his new home after being a fan favorite here in Chicago. I couldn't be happier for the guy, honestly. But to compare him to Schwarber, I feel like if he has the same kind of postseason success that Schwarber's had over the last few years, and kind of getting that moniker as being a Mr. October type of guy, uh Jake's doing it much earlier in his career than the Schwarbino had a
Well,
chance to.
I mean,
And
yes
I
and
guess
no. I mean,
he's 16.
he's sat for a few years with injuries and stuff.
This is
So
true. This is true.
not necessarily
But
age wise earlier, but as far as like at bats.
MLB experience,
Yeah.
yeah. Being up at the MLB level and having the games played and at bats under his belt, he's doing it sooner. So I mean, I wouldn't mind, seeing that kind of postseason from him. It just depends on how long his team is able to stay in contention in the postseason. It's not going to be an easy road for them.
Yeah. No, it's not. And I know that their pitching's taken some hits here in recent days. So, yeah, I don't know who I've got winning it. I've got a bunch of teams that I would be fine with winning, I guess, at this point. I just don't want the Twins to win.
That's pretty much. Yeah, I feel you on that. I can definitely get behind.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much where I'm at. I mean, I don't really I don't have anybody in particular that I'm rooting for because there's a bunch of teams that I'd be fine with them doing things. I'd be fine, with the Phillies, the Brewers, the Diamondbacks, any of those, the Marlins. I'd be fine with the Dodgers, even though I that's not like any kind of underdog scenario at all. But
Right.
I would be personally fine with it just because, the last time they won it, it was, everybody was clowning them because it was in a 60-game season. And I was just like, I mean, and the Braves, the Braves are phenomenally good. So
it's just a well-run organization.
Yeah, just such a good organization. And, Ronald Acuna Jr. took me to a World Series win in my fantasy baseball. So,
Hey.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate that. The Schaumburg Taxi Squad took home the championship trophy this year, and that was nice. So pretty good stuff. I had
Schaumburg Taxi Squad. Did you have Andrew Vaughn on your?
I did roster? Actually. I did. I did have Andrew Vaughn. So I had
Danny Mendick stashed on your bench somewhere. He was the epitome of Uber driver's dream.
No Garrett Crochet, but I did have Jake Berger towards the end of the season.
There you go. All right.
Like my big players were Semien and Acuna were like my two like really really solid guys. I also had Altuve that came back from injury later on in the season, and I got like 2 months out of him at the end of the season. He kind of took up when Trout got injured because I had Trout too, and Trout got injured. Yeah, no, I had a great team. I had Snell and I had Fried who was like injured all year.
Max Fried is.
I had Zach Gallen. I had a great team. Like I drafted really really well.
Good for you.
Yeah, so I finally
you got all these guys coming back. For the the push. Sounds a little bit like my fantasy football team.
Oh, mine's terrible.
Not the same, not in the same conversation. Well, I'm doing what I set out to do by splitting the first 4 games, starting my fantasy football year, because I we do an auction draft in the money league, and being that you're in an auction draft, everybody has a shot at any player, right? You're not stuck in a snake where everybody's picking the next best available guy. So I made some calculated risks by taking guys like Cooper Cup, who was injured early in the offseason. And when we had our draft, he had not had his setback yet. It looked like he was going to be coming back, but I knew he was coming back from a hamstring injury.
Yeah.
I took Jonathan Taylor, knowing that he was going to be on the pup list and was working towards trying to be traded away from the Colts.
Yeah.
And now after week 2, I had Saquon Barkley at the end of the week. In week 2, go down with a high ankle sprain, and he's inactive this week again. But it's looking like next week I could have all 3 of these guys back, on top of a team that's already been the highest scoring
Oh, look at you.
team in the league 1 week, and the second highest scoring team in the league this week. And another one of the weeks I would have beaten more than half the league if I had played the right matchup. So I'm feeling like maybe, just maybe, in a week or 2 here, if these guys come back healthy, I get Saquon, Cooper Cup, and Jonathan Taylor all back and healthy and playing well. Fingers crossed, buddy. Fingers crossed. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna call them. I'm not gonna.
I hope it goes well for you, because
I
my team is
appreciate that.
probably the worst in my fantasy football league. I think I scored like 65 points this week in a PPR. Yeah, that's how bad they are. Yeah, no, they're terrible. So tonight, the Arizona Fall League kicked off. Currently, the Desert Dogs are losing 1-0 in the bottom of the 7th. And you've got doubles from Jacob Burke and Brian Ramos. And Colson Montgomery is 0 for 3 with a fly out, a ground out, and something else. And the entire team's just got 3 hits. Brainer Bonacio has the other hit for the Desert Dogs. So,
yeah, 2 out of 3 coming from White Sox affiliate players. Can't be mad about that.
Yeah, Jake Eater is getting the start tomorrow. No stream for that game, which is unfortunate. It would be cool if we could get eyes on him, but unfortunately, that game is not being streamed. So maybe on Friday, maybe we get Yosimar Kusin. That would be kind of cool. It'd be nice to see at least some of the pitching, out there a little bit. But tonight, the first 3 hitters for the Desert Dogs was Jacob Burke leading off, Colson Montgomery, and then Brian Ramos. So your 1, 2, and 3 hitter were all White Sox players. So that was that is a welcome change to what I'm used to seeing from White Sox players that have been at the Arizona Fall League. Basically, like as long as I can remember, like the good prospects that we had there were generally more pitching than hitting. So it's nice to have like some offensive stars there as well. So yeah, so at Daily White Sox on Twitter, whitesoxdaily.substack.com. You can find us on our YouTube channel, and we have a Facebook group as well. My name is Ian Eskridge, at iEskridge on Twitter. My co-host, Danny Miller, at Danny Miller WSD. You got anything else, Danny, for this week?
No. Like I said earlier on, I'm just ready to see what the postseason brings as far as the brackets and who's going to move on. But beyond that, just ready for the White Sox to get rolling into the off season, and just hoping for the best at this point, honestly, because what else do we have?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, we finally are through that awful season. Hope and like the thing is that like just like with the TLR hire of having like the excitement yanked out from under us, we had that happen with the Getz hiring. But this time maybe it'll turn out different than the last. Maybe something will go right, and that's all we have is hope. So
we have been more than optimistic and positive on this show for the last few years, even after watching some really bad baseball. And I think now I'm at the point where I'm not going to be now. And we talked about this earlier this season. This was one of our big things. Was okay. I'm going to give Pedro a chance. Everybody's going to get a fair shake. Well, you've had your fair shake. Now it's we've said the same thing about Rick Hahn early this season and going into the trade deadline and all these things that were happening. Going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Just not gonna wave the flag for you. Not gonna carry golden chalices and exalt your name on the heavens. But I was gonna give you the benefit of doubt, and you have to show me something. Well, now there is no benefit of doubt anymore. That is gone. I am the pessimist, and now it's all about show me something. So
yeah, that's fair.
turning over a new leaf in this off season, and I'm sure when we get into our bold prediction show at the onset of next year, which is some time off, I'm going to continue to have that same mentality, even if the Sox go out and sign two monster guys somehow and trade for somebody big. I don't really give a damn. Now you got to show me. That's where
Yeah,
I'm at. Show me something.
yeah. I don't see them making any huge moves.
Yeah, I
But
don't think
you
so.
never know.
No.
Yeah. So thanks for everybody that came and hung out in the chat and came and watched. And if you were listening to this on the podcast, we appreciate you. We will catch you guys next week, and I don't know, maybe there'll be something interesting to talk about. We'll see what happens here with the coaching staff because, something could happen this week, but you never know. Since it's the White Sox hiring somebody, and we know it's going to be somebody from the Royals, we don't have to worry about them we don't have to worry about them being done with the playoffs to hire them. So they're already free.
Playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. They're already free. So, more than likely, any additional coaching staff hires could be done before the end of this week, before the next stream, because
I was gonna say before the wild card games are even over.
yeah, there are no playoffs happening, so we don't have to worry about that. So, thanks for stopping in. We appreciate all you guys, and we will catch you guys next week. You guys have a great night. Thanks. Bye. And